I'm just going to pass it over to Shiv. Shiv, of course, gave us a little bit, but Shiv's professional life is spent in the Academy of, say, in academia, teaching how to build bridges across spatial gaps. Now in his retirement, is focused on building bridges across wide chasms across the heart and the mind, diversity of humanity. For this purpose, he founded Chen. He's dedicated to researching, developing, promoting, and delivering education to globalize the mind. He recently published a book entitled The Common Ground, A Unified Basis of Existence. Life happens automatically, and breath, a vital function of life, also happens automatically. Learn to pay attention to the breath, and we will learn to make life happen. In it lies our health, our wellness. In it also lies our capacity to see the all-inclusive oneness of all existence. And with that, I'll pass it over to Shiv Tarwal. Shiv. Share.
I'm sharing the screen with this guy sitting on the right-hand side, and this would be an animation. This ball will start rolling down the hills and valleys there, and when the ball goes down, what we all do is exhale, and when the ball starts going up, we inhale. And the way we sit is spine vertical and neck bone aligned with the spine, so the weight of the torso and the weight of the head is carried to the seat through the bone, not through muscles. The thighs are horizontal, legs are vertical, feet planted flat on the ground, and we keep our mouth closed, breathe through the nose only, without holding in or out. And I'm going to start the animation, and then we start breathing as the screen directs us. So this is inhalation, and notice the abdomen expand. You can see the abdomen of this guy expanding and contracting too. So inhale and exhale. And the feelings of your mind. And we'll do that for 10 minutes. And then we'll talk about this practice. This
Thank you,
is
Chef.
deep breathing. We were breathing at the rate of 6 breaths per minute. In 10 minutes, we breathed 60 breaths. Ordinarily, we would have breathed 150 breaths. An ordinary human being breathes at the rate of 15 to 20 breaths per minute. And what we were doing is moving from an ordinary breath to a deeper and a slower breath. And we have a whole hour to talk about, actually maybe 2 hours to talk about this process, what is the science behind it, what is the spirituality behind it, and why this particular practice can deal with the problems that the movie that Jeff showed in the beginning talked about. Many of those problems are consciousness related. And what this practice does is raise our consciousness so that those problems are. This is what we're going to talk about. Raise your consciousness and breathe deep. And it is a practice which regulates our energy and our consciousness. And energy and consciousness are the two words that describe this whole universe. I have a mind. My consciousness is manifested through the mind, and I have a body. Energy is manifested through the body. And how to regulate our energy and how to regulate our consciousness. There is a process which is body-centered and mind-centered, and that process is what we're going to be talking about. And once we follow that process will raise our consciousness so that we start exploring the truth. Otherwise, we believe. Believing means we know that that is the truth. And if we are so sure that we know that that is the truth, then we do not develop and we do not explore and we do not discover. When humanity was created, it was only one humanity. We did not know much, we did not believe much, but humans have got a desire to know. It is called curiosity. And because of that curiosity, we started to explore. And once we started to explore, we found certain truths. Then the culture of exploration got replaced by a culture of believing. And believing those truths we do not understand, which we have not explored. Doubt is kind of inherent in belief. And once we have that doubt, once we feel that doubt, when we start to explore, and once we start to explore, then we find the truth. That is the nature of humankind. And you know, I made this slide because Interfaith Harmony Week, that's the UN regulation resolution, and yoga, International Yoga Day, is also a UN resolution. The interfaith harmony can be created if we start to practice yoga. It's a contemplative practice, and that contemplative practice will lead to interfaith harmony, and it will lead to the vision of Shen, of all inclusiveness. And that is what we are trying to explore here. And there is one of the two methods that our friend Fred showed us. There are only two things that we do. The practice is of making the unconscious conscious. Okay, if we don't make the unconscious conscious, then nature directs our life, and we call it fate. This quote is from Carl Gustav Jung. He's a psychologist, very accomplished psychologists and psychiatrists. And this is breathing. This green line here is a muscle called diaphragm. And this is the chest cavity, and this is where the lungs are located. And the diaphragm is a muscle which kind of run the lungs as a pump, okay? When lungs are squeezed, air goes out. When the lungs are expanded, air are sucked in from the atmosphere into the lungs. So this is the pumping action that is called breathing. And this breathing can go on all the time, 24/7. We must breathe, otherwise we don't live. And this is an intercostal muscle. And this is the only intercostal muscle that we have control on. Okay. And we can run it with our volition. We can make the pumping more, okay, instead of moving it maybe 2 centimeters, we can move it 5 centimeters up and maybe 5 centimeters down. And that is what is deep breathing. And that is the connection between the mind and the body. This muscle called diaphragm, it works automatically, and it works under our control of our volition. And that is the control of the mind. So this is the muscle that connects the mind and the body, you can say. Breathing is normal breathing, or autonomic breathing, or ordinary breathing is, it happens all the time. And what we are trying to do is we're going to run it ourselves with our own awareness. When we breathe in with our awareness. We control how much we breathe in, and we breathe out with our awareness, moving the diaphragm more than it would move automatically. Okay, this is the habit to take up. Our behavior. There's a stimulus, there's a response. I see something, I decide automatically what I'm going to do with it. That's a reactive response. I hear something, you say something bad to me, I pick up a 2x4 and hit you on the head with, and that is the reactive response. And we want to get out of that, and we want to respond with awareness, with consideration. And that is what we need to do. Once we go from an automatic reactive response to a response with awareness, then we have won the game. And this is how we're connected, our physiology and our psychology, our body and our mind. A breath goes in and out automatically, stimulus and response out automatically. That is psychology, this is physiology. This is body, this is mind. And if we run our breathing with a thought or awareness or consciousness or volition, then we behave with volition, consideration, consciousness, whatever word you want to use for it. So if I ask you to behave thoughtfully, it probably may not work. But if I ask you to breathe thoughtfully, even a child can do that. Okay, so I can make a child behave thoughtfully by making him breathe thoughtfully, or breathe with awareness. So this is the key to human development, because it's got a connection with the body. It's easier for us to use the body than to use the mind. What it does between stimulus and response, it gives us an opportunity to make a choice. Our lungs have got a capacity of 6 liters, but we must have about 1.2 liters in the lungs all the time. So we can really breathe in 6 minus 1.2, 4.8 liters of air every time. We can breathe, go up to here, and then down to here, and then up to here, and then down to here. But what we do breathe in only half a liter of air. Instead of 4.8 liters, we breathe half a liter of air. And if we run a machine like that, we won't be making much money. And if we run our body like that, we are not doing ourselves a service. We are not doing humanity a service. And I'll show you all that later on as we go. And this is a little video that shows the extent to which lungs can expand. These are lungs taken out from a cadaver, and a professor of physiology trying to show the kind of expansion that the lungs are capable of. And deep breathing should be done in a certain posture. This is one posture which is highly recommended, but when we are sitting in a classroom, we won't be using this posture. Our classrooms are not set up to lie flat on the ground. We lie flat on the ground. This is the best posture. The spine is, neck bone and spine are aligned with each other. And when you're lying like this, your body is relaxed to begin with. And when we breathe deep, mouth is closed, breathing through the nose, expanding the lungs and expanding the stomach. This is the diaphragm. We move the diaphragm up and down to expand the lungs, breathing in through the nose. And that is inhalation, and this is exhalation. Out through the nose, lungs shrink, diaphragm moves up, stomach shrinks. And this is the posture that we were using. We don't sit like this or like that. We won't be able to deep breathe. Our abdomen will not be able to move forward and backward. And those two postures will not be conducive to deep breathing. Now we're going to move to the background theory. The previous slides were essentially talking about the practice. We did the practice and we looked at some slides which are practice related. Now we're going to go to the theoretical, the science behind it. This is evolution. We start, life begins like this with one single cell. And this is what happened about 3.5 billion years ago. That is all the life that we had on the planet. One cell. And then from one cell to many cells, to plants and creatures and reptiles and fish and mammals, to human being. The primitive human being was 200,000 years ago, whereas that life started 3.5 billion years ago. And each life has got a mind. The mental capabilities may be different, but the mind is there. So the evolution of the brain is the evolution of the brain of that one single cell creature to these animals to a human. And actually, the genes I have started 3.5 billion years ago. They started to exist 3.5 billion years ago. Those genes that I have in my body that running my life now, they were connected and they were inheriting from those genes that started to exist 3.5 billion years ago. So I have the genetic memory of genes of these insects, these kind of vegetative life, and then reptilian life, and then the animals, and then I got my own characteristic that is a human. So in Islam, there is a divine name called Al-Bari. Al-Bari means the evolver. This is the evolution. We evolved from primitive life forms to creatures and to animals, and that's what we are. So if we look at our brain, we have a brain stem that is right on top of the spine. And then we have a bunch of neural structures called the limbic brain. And there are two almond-sized structures in the limbic area called the amygdala. And then we have this hat that we wear on top, just underneath the skin, is called the neocortex. So the brain stem, the creatures, the single-cell creatures that existed 3.5 billion years ago, they didn't have the brain stem. They only had some nerves, and those nerves they were used in reflex response to avoid danger. All life is meant to survive, and to survive, we have to move away or fight the danger that we have, and to know that there is a danger, you have to have some kind of a sensing mechanism. That is the nervous system. And the primitive life had a primitive nervous system acting through reflex response. Reflex response, there is no thinking involved. It's just an automatic response. And then, as the life grew, emotions came, and those emotions are handled by the limbic brain. The brain stem, you can say, the reptilian brain, very ancient primitive brain, and then with a little bit of evolution, emotions grow, and then the amygdala comes up, and then further evolution, mammals started to have the neocortex. That's why it's called neocortex, because it came on the scene much later. What's the job of that one? That one, we can just look at it. Evolution of the brain, primitive life form is this, and then non-mammals here, birds, fish, reptiles at the most, and mammals and mammary gland. Mammary glands are the glands that give out milk. Mammals are those kind of animals that give live births. So to suckle the live birth, the newborn, they have mammary glands to generate milk, and this is where love begins. Mammals is the first life form that could express themselves with physical love. So this is what is called this part of the brain. The brain stem is what is called the creaturely faculty, essentially. And then we have an animal faculty. We are creatures, we are animals, and then we are also humans. Okay, and the creaturely faculty, the brain stem works. Again, this is the last reflex knot. Okay, this is the last time when we act reflexively. Our nervous system acts reflexively without involving our brain, and then it involves the brain, just this part of the brain, which is called the unconscious automation kind of a thing. This runs all our automated life functions without us knowing. This runs our breathing without our knowing that we are breathing. And this runs all of our emotional life, subconscious partly automated, partly without automation. And this here is where consciousness comes into the picture. No automation at all. We do things with proper thought using the neocortex. Connection with the psychology, brain stem is the unconscious mind. That is the biggest part of the mind. Limbic brain is the subconscious mind. It's much smaller than the unconscious. And then the conscious is a little part of the iceberg that's above the water. That is what this neocortex is. We can run our life unconsciously or subconsciously without involving the neocortex or the conscious part of life. And this is what we are. We think we are very wise, but mostly we have an animal brain, we have creaturely brain. And let's look at this life. What do we start as? We start as one single cell. Again, when the sperm of the father and the egg of the mother unite to form one cell. And then over the years, that one cell starts to divide. This is biology. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and like that, they start dividing and growing. This is how growth happens. And then comes Jim Smith, which is 6 foot 3 inches, chief of police of Waterloo, and 37.2 trillion cells. Each cell is a living cell. Many cells are born again every day. Many cells die. Billions of cells die every day, and they have to be replaced. Okay, and some cells become our eye cells, some become brain cells, some become my skin cells, some blood cells, and so on and so forth. They all cooperate with each other so that I can survive. And that is what life is. So I was a little creature, single cell creature. I was a little animal, and I am a human being. This is what I was. All my mental capability or my brain capability was here. Then I grew up a little bit. Then I have this and that. And then I grow up an adult human being. I have this and this and that. This is how I grow. And we forget that we are everything. Our mind is like this, mind of like this, our mind is like that, and mind is like that. So backward genetic continuity right up to the first single cell ancestor. The extent to which the ancestors made the unconscious conscious determines the nature of our initial brain. We have our inbuilt tendencies that are determined by the path of evolution that was followed by the genes that comprised my first cell. And then I started to grow, I started to learn. One of the things that we learn is about God. As I grow, our parents want us to know about God, thinking that that'll make us better human beings. And so they tell us about God. So that whatever we learn about God becomes our conditioning. So we have inheritance from through evolution in our genetic memory. And then that genetic memory is overlaid to change the expression of genetic memory by this life conditioning. And then we become a full-grown adult. It takes about 25 years for the neocortex to developed fully. So before we can think properly, before we even have the equipment to think properly, we 25 years of our life has already passed. Okay, that is who we are. Let's go to scripture. In the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. Heaven is the metaphor for consciousness. Earth is the metaphor for energy. Energy comprises matter, which forms our body, and consciousness is the memory that runs our mind. And that memory comes from our evolution and from our conditioning. I refer to the to Genesis, these verses, verse 126 to 30, and God here telling the human beings that you have dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowl and the air, and everything that moveth upon the earth, all creatures and all animals and all earth, you got dominion over it. And we'll just see what that means. Dominion means responsibility. Dominion also means control. So you control them and you are also responsible for them. And then God said, behold, I've given you every herb being seed, which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be food. This is food. Creatures and animals are your dominion. They are not food. You're supposed to be responsible for them, to control them, but they are not food. So it says a lot here. Every green herb is for food. Again, Genesis, this is what we are. There is the Spirit of God, and this is, and then from the Spirit of God, which can be represented by a point, it's not concrete at all, it's not visible at all. A point is without any dimensions. We cannot see it. We can imagine it, but we cannot see it because it's got no dimensions. That's what spirit is like. And then that spirit starts to concretize into our body, and on its way to concretization, this part we have, which we cannot describe. This we describe as human soul, and in our normal English, it is our intellect. And this is our animal soul. In normal English, it is the ego. And then we have creaturely soul, and this is our nervous system. Okay. There's a message to increase the volume. Just 1 second, please. I'm sorry, I can't do very much about it. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, maybe there's something wrong with the person who sent the message. So it is.
No, you seem to be fine, Shiv.
Okay.
You seem to be fine. Okay.
All right. This human soul, when God says you got dominion over animals and creatures and the earth, body, creaturely soul, animal soul, human soul has got dominion over it. It can control it, but it's also got the responsibility that it looks after it. Okay, so that is what is implied by dominion, that this controls this, which can control this, and this can control that. So this is how the control system works. The human soul, the intellect, is the executive that controls the rest of our life. Okay, so responsibility and protectorate, that is what the dominion means. Now let's go to evolution again. Animal soul, what is it for? Sorry, creaturely soul. Instincts. Okay, what are the instincts of the creaturely soul? Survival, sustenance, and procreation. Okay, make sure that nobody kills me. Make sure that I live, have some food from somewhere, and I procreate. Okay, so the consciousness that I have is devoted to survival, sustenance, and procreation. And even the creatures, little single-cell creatures, have got, they need energy to fulfill these roles. Okay, so energy and consciousness go together. And all of that, this here, creatures work unconsciously. And then comes animals. Animals start to recognize they're a little more self-conscious. All life forms that look like them, so they become a herd. There's a safety in herd identity, and that grows, and that is our subconscious. Okay, so the animals, in addition to survival, sustenance, and procreation, are also self-conscious of their community. In animals, the community is herd community, and this is our subconscious animal instincts. And then we grow as a human being. So we have all of this that creatures had, and then all of that characterized animals, community identity or herd identity. And then we also have family, which is our own children and wife, and the next of kin that we love, and we love conditionally. And then what we have to do is grow beyond that. There's a possibility of unconditional love, loving the neighbor, whosoever that neighbor may be, and that has to be conscious. This is all unconscious or subconscious, tending to be conscious, but if we develop consciously, do all that is subconscious and unconscious consciously, then we can learn to love unconditionally. That is evolution and spirituality all put together. Instincts of the mind are stored in memory of our genes, and that's what we are talking about. And when we are survival oriented, fear is the guarantee of survival. Fear is built into us. To save our life, we got to keep watching for danger to survival. And desire to sustain, we got sustenance and survival, the two main needs or two main instincts, and all of that must be attended to before anything else. So they keep the we have a gas pedal. That gas pedal keeps pushed. So we want to do everything now. If I have a desire, do I want the object of desire tomorrow? No, now. If I'm afraid, do I want to save my life now or tomorrow? By tomorrow, I may be dead if I don't look after a fire in the house or run away from it. So that is the gas pedal, and that gas pedal is pushed automatically by our instincts. And we also got a brake pedal, and brake pedal, we got to push it, okay? And the tools to push that brake pedal, attention to making the unconscious conscious. That attention, when we apply that attention, then we are pushing the brake pedal. And if the brake pedal and gas pedal, they are not used both together, then a life is out of control. And this here is the an animation that I'm going to run, and a man sitting down with an erect backbone, just like the posture we saw in deep breathing. And these white lights are, you can say, they are the chakras in the Indian system of physiology, and in the modern system of physiology. This is the pineal gland, and this here, these are the adrenal and the glands, the sexual glands, whatever they're called. Adrenal is here. No, this is the sexual gland, and this is survival, bare survival. Once we get past bare survival, then procreation comes in. When we and then sustenance comes in. This is the gut fire, and then heart feeling comes in. This is the heart center, and then cognitive perception, the ability to perceive. There's the thyroid gland here. The secretions of thyroid gland, if they are not, if they are out of whack, then we cannot perceive things right. And then we have the prefrontal cortex or the neocortex. That's where the intellect resides, and that is knowing, thought, and will. And then spiritual wisdom is located above the pineal gland, you can say. So these you can, 7 of them are chakras or the glands in modern physiology. And here there are 2. This tube, you can say, is the gas line, and this is the brake line. Okay, so we have to raise our consciousness, which is here. This here is showing the consciousness. Let's see. Here, things are running in harmony. I'm using the brake pedal and the gas pedal both together in harmony. Then the consciousness will rise. Okay, and the Sanskrit names here, the consciousness is called Kundalini, and the sympathetic nervous system is called Pingala, and the parasympathetic nervous system is called Ida. So if there is no harmony between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, consciousness will stay at the level of mere survival. Here we are using the gas pedal more than the brake pedal, and so the consciousness starts dropping. It goes again to bare survival level rather than higher than survival. So we need to take our consciousness from bare survival at our very base to the top of the head, above the pineal gland. That is where we have to go. And the way to go there is by running our physiology properly, consciously. The physiology is run unconsciously, okay, automatically. We digest food when we are sleeping. We breathe when we are sleeping. We circulate our blood in the arteries and veins when we are sleeping. We have no control over, digestive system, circulation of blood directly, but we have an indirect control. We have control over breathing. Once we run our breathing consciously, then indirectly we are running all of them consciously. And here, this is the eye that you can say is our consciousness, what we can see. We can only behave depending on what we can see. And once we can raise the consciousness all the way from mere survival to spiritual wisdom. Regulation of life and energy, what we doing, we run our parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system and the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system in sync with each other. So what happens when we are running the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system properly? Our consciousness is raised, then this is what we are psychologically. I'm using different terminology now. Intellect is for the human soul of the Bible. Ego is for the animal soul of the Bible. Sensory faculty is for the creaturely soul of the Bible. And then we have the physical body. And if we are parasympathetic and the sympathetic are not in sync with each other, they are not harmonized, then our mind is not calm. We are in a state of arousal all the time. And then we behave from the outer layers. Here we are behaving from these layers: body, physical layer, or the nervous system layer, the sensory faculty. That's it. That's where survival and sustenance and the procreation lies. And then here, this is identity, community identity or herd identity is similar, not much difference. And once we are calm, then we run our life through the inner layer. Inner layer is that spiritual mystery that we have. This is the spirit. And one big problem that North America, not only North America, the rest of the whole world is experiencing these days is the when we are unborn, being carried by the mother, and the arousal of the mother gets to be a toxic state. She's not calm, she's always aroused, and when the arousal is at a toxic state, what happens is some chemicals are generated by our endocrine glands, and those chemicals get into the body of the unborn fetus. And when that child is born, his mind is all screwed up, his structure of the brain is all screwed up, malformed brain, and he lives all his life with all kinds of physical and mental problems. So the thing to do is, if you keep the child close to our heart, I can teach from, right from the day one is born. If we hold the child like this, close to our heart, and breathe deeply, and we are built so that our breaths sync with each other. So this is one way I can teach the children to breathe deep. Okay, very young children. Here, little grown-up children, we can teach just like I teach a class. Deep breathing is not brain science that cannot be taught, can be taught very easily to young children. These are Buddhist monks in Vietnam. Some are maybe 6-year-old and some are maybe 10-year-old. Our brain is plastic and it can be molded. And it can mold itself and transform itself for individual and collective good with making the unconscious conscious. And all the brain has to do is make the unconscious breathing into conscious breathing. Just one exercise that can transform our behavior, transform our brain, the way we think. So this, you can say, is the discovery of the yoga system, and also later on of Lord Buddha, when he went on his discovery or exploration of how to help humanity to get rid of their suffering. And that's what he came up with, conscious breathing. And that's what he taught until he died at the age of 92. This is a cure for our planetary health, harmony, and common good. And that is what the little YouTube video that we saw was about. Jalaluddin Rumi, eating lightly, breathing deeply, moving freely and gazing intently. Intently means pay attention to everything you see. Moving freely means let the body go. Eating lightly, don't fill your stomach too much. You don't need it. I'll show you why you don't need it. And breathing deeply. These four things are the practices of Rumi that made Jalaluddin into Rumi. He lived in, his body and mind were in ecstasy all his life. Our research. I hired a student and I made him to gather this data of various life forms and their respiratory rate and their lifespan. So this column is respiratory rate, and this column is lifespan of different life forms, including human beings. Where are human beings? Somewhere here, using the biological name. I don't even know where human being is. Somewhere here.
Homo sapien, adult Homo sapien.
Homo sapien, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Homo sapien. Okay, so this is, if you take that and plot it, this is how the graph plots. The lower the rate of breathing, the higher the lifespan. And the higher the rate of breathing, lower the lifespan. And this is nature. It's not, the data was collected from a book of respirology, breath respirology. This is another study that I did, and this was a pilot study. I tested myself. I tested myself measuring the amount, what happens to my breath, what happens as a result of deep breathing. Normal human being, I talked about, breathe at 15 breaths per minute. And if I breathe at 12 breaths or 9 breaths or 6 breaths or 3 breaths per minute, what will happen to the oxygen uptake in my body? The oxygen that my body uses per minute, okay? Here is the oxygen number of times, the ratio of oxygen used by my body while breathing at different rates of breathing, compared with the oxygen uptake at 15 breaths per minute. So the result is, I did the study on myself. I devised the experiment and ran it on myself, plus 2 other people, one from England, one from here. But I took all the readings on myself. On them, I only took some readings. So I pulled all those readings together and drew this graph. And this graph shows that I can, if I slow down my breathing all the way to 2.4 breaths per minute, my body can use 3 times as much oxygen as I would if I breathed at 15 breaths per minute. So that is that experiment. The key thing is, when we talk of nutrition, what do we talk about? Food. We talk about water, mostly food. We'll buy most expensive food, but food can be converted into life energy only with oxygen. Okay, again, it's a story of physiology. Those people who understand physiology, they understand without oxygen, we cannot create energy. Food, what is nutrition? Nutrition is our capacity to create energy. We may be eating the best food money can buy. If we don't have enough oxygen in our body, we will not be producing energy from food. Food will be wasted. So we can get rid of hunger problem if we don't eat as much, but we breathe a lot. We can share the money that we can save in our food, but we will not be lacking energy. And let me, before I finish, the last sentence I'm going to talk about is what is energy metabolic system? How does it work? Food is digested and is converted into glucose, which is stored in our liver. When we need to use it, when we need energy, we take that glucose. Glucose then is circulating in our body through the bloodstream. And when we breathe air, the air goes into the bottom of the lungs. From the bottom of the lungs, oxygen is extracted by the bloodstream, and oxygen gets carried by the red blood cells in the bloodstream. And so the circulation of the blood carries oxygen and glucose from food to each and every cell of our body. And those cells who need energy, all cells need energy, but some cells need more energy than the others. Which cells need more energy? If I'm running, my leg cells will need more energy. If I'm thinking, my brain cells will need more energy. If I've eaten food, my stomach cells will need more energy. So our body has got the intelligence to send the right amount of energy as per need. So one molecule of glucose, if we don't have enough oxygen, can produce 2 molecules of ATP. ATP is the energy currency. That ATP can be converted into chemical energy, can be converted into heat energy, can be converted into electrical energy in our body. Our brain runs on electricity, nervous system runs on electricity. So that energy, which can be converted to any form of energy in our body, that is called life energy. Life energy can be converted into sexual energy, could be converted into all kinds of energies, okay, in our body. And if we have enough oxygen, one molecule of food will produce 36 molecules of ATP, 18 times, 18 times. 2 molecules ATP per molecule of glucose compared with 36 molecules if we have enough oxygen. So with that, I think that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.